Okay, we will go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everybody to the fall term university updates for this term. Just a reminder, we do have the online submissions available if you have questions, but a new feature we've turned on is the Q&A. It's available for all attendees to post questions to the panelists, and we will go through those at the end of the webinar if there are any questions. So just wanted to give everybody a heads up that it's available. And first up, we will have co-president Laura Moore kick us off. Laura.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today we have a pretty full agenda. We'll be hearing from a variety of folks around everything that's happening at the university. I do, however, want to start on a more somber note. An info line just went out today, and I want to take some time to reiterate some of what is in that info line. We want to take a moment to acknowledge the tragedies at the University of Idaho and the University of Virginia. When something like this happens anywhere, but especially at another university, it impacts our campus. It impacts how people feel in terms of safety on campus. I know that Student Affairs and Advancement and other offices have received numerous calls regarding the incidents at the University of Virginia and University of Idaho. Just want to reiterate that we take campus safety very seriously. We stay in touch and have really well-developed relationships with our local emergency responders, both on a response basis as well as threat assessments that they help us with across campus. We have a wonderful relationship with local law enforcement, and we rely on them heavily. We do encourage people, and you've heard it before, but it seems timely to say it again, that if you see something, say something. You can contact Campus Safety at 962-3911 if you have an emergency or a concern related to safety. You can also reach directly to Student Affairs if you'd like to discuss something perhaps that you have concerns about. I know that we have great teams in Student Affairs with the Counseling Center, and they are always there to work with students, faculty, or staff that need to share concerns or discuss things that perhaps you're not ready to talk to security about, but you would like to have someone to talk with. Student Affairs and the Counseling Center is there for that purpose. We also have an emergency notification system we use as needed to keep up to date. Everything from campus closures for inclement weather all the way through to more serious emergencies. So every year we push this, but please make sure that you go into that and make sure that your information is up to date so that you are receiving those alerts. It's eou.edu/emergency. And that's where you can make sure your information is accurate in the system and that you are receiving our emergency notifications. In essence, we grieve for those other universities today. And we ask that you keep them in your thoughts and prayers as they go forward through this really difficult time. With that, we will transition to some less somber items, and I want to turn it over to Co-President Shavs.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Yeah, I think you can't explain or reason out when these type of events happen at other universities, but it certainly justifies all the efforts that EOU and puts in to have a safe campus here. So I encourage you all to go back and look at the things that Laura just said, so you know what the resources are that are available to you, and what to do when. So I would like to provide just a short update on the presidential search process. I will start out by thanking our board chair, Cheryl Martin, for all of her hard work in helping us, helping formalize the presidential search committee, which has been announced. You can go to the web page that we have about that, and it lists all the members. In fact, I think we have 3 of the search committee members participating in this meeting and speaking. But the committee itself is well representative, not only of the campus, but of the region. We have some really quality people on the committee, and I think that they're going to do a great job in helping us find the next president. We're also ranging in on hiring the firm that we will work with, the search firm. We have it narrowed down to 3, and we're doing telephone interviews with them this week. So we expect to select the firm within a week or so that the search committee will be working with. And again, if you go to that webpage, you'll see a sample. And I want to stress that it's a sample schedule for hiring our new president. And if you look at that, it looks like we're about a month back from where we thought, but things will ebb and flow as we go through this process. So we still have the same goal of having a new president on board by the 1st of July. And we also have the 3 companies that we're interviewing to handle the search process for us are all have a lot of experience, a lot of good qualities. And like I said, that selection will be made within the week. And then after that, the first thing that will happen is getting a lot of input from the campus community on what should be in the business profile that goes out in the national advertisements. So that's a real next opportunity for some input on an important part of this process. And then I'll close just by saying there's going to be a lot more opportunities for everyone to provide input as we work through getting to the finalists that will come on campus. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Up next is Tim Seidel, Vice President of University Advancement. Tim.
Thanks, Jeff. Getting a lot of questions. So we thought we provided about the legislature and what's happening. So I thought we'd provide an update. This is similar to the update I gave to the board last week. But if you weren't familiar with it, that former House Speaker Tina Kotek won the Oregon legislative or Oregon race for governor. The Secretary of State will certify that on the 15th. But Representative Christine Drazan, who gave Speaker Kotek a pretty good run for her money, has conceded. But that's one of the top pieces. The other piece really has to do with the balance of the legislature. Currently, right now, there are 12 Republicans and 16 Democrats. We have 1 undecided and 1 independent. There is a similar shift in the House. There are 20 Republicans and 27 Democrats. What we're seeing, though, is that there's no supermajority for the House or the Senate. For the House, it requires 36 seats. For the Senate, it requires 18. We're not seeing that there. So what it means is that the legislature, the Oregon legislature, has to really work hard on working together to make things function, which could be in our benefit, certainly as we go forward into the legislative session. On the Senate side, very, very tight there, if you're not watching that, but there's currently the Democrats will hold control over the Senate because Vice President Harris holds the deciding seat there. And the House is very close to being Republican controlled. There's still a number of seats that are up. Like most of those are in California. There's a few in Nevada, Arizona, and New York that are still up in the air. Right now, there are 216 Republicans and 207 Democrats. There's 218 for control, so you can see the Republicans are only 2 seats away for that. Interesting point. Congressman Cliff Bentz, who is an EOU alum, will likely have a chair in the session in the session coming up over water, oceans, and wildlife, which is actually important to particularly rural Oregon water in particular. So we're waiting to see how that all shakes out, but they are starting up sessions now as we speak on the federal side. Turning to the budget, the governor's recommended budget still has to come out. Of course, Governor Kotek has just been named, but we know that her office has already been working on framing up a budget. They're receiving information and recommendations for carryovers from Governor Brown's staff, but the new governor typically puts their stamp of their priorities on things in their budget that will be rolled out likely early next month. We know that the priorities for Governor Kotek include housing and healthcare. Those are really high priorities for her. Higher education is not a super high priority, though she's very familiar with it. We've worked with her a lot. We have a great working relationship with her. Eastern does. She's got some great, interesting connections out in Ontario, so we'll lean on some of those as well. But there will be a special committee on higher education, which we're looking forward to engaging with throughout the legislative session. The budget for higher education, the Public University Support Fund, the HEC, recommended a $993.5 million budget. That is great, but for the universities, as we see it, it's not enough. So we're going to be pushing on a number that's 1.05 billion as we go into the session. We'll be talking about the need for that additional investment, particularly to provide additional resources, wraparound services for students and support students, services for students, and also to help just mitigate the costs, the rising costs of running an institution. We are seeing a significant increase in the community colleges budget. That's understandable. They're really trying to bolster what's happening with the community colleges, but we'll probably be making a point that, hey, you invested here, we need to invest in higher education as well in universities, and that'll be pretty important. That budget is just a baseline, like I said, and then there's other things that we'll be focused on going into the session, including priorities for Eastern, which include major renovation plans for Losa Hall Phase 2. We'd like to get some additional Strong Start funding. These do provide significant wraparound services for students, particularly those at risk. Sports lottery funding, which is huge for this institution, and funds for our Rural Engagement and Vitality Center and for the Moonshot for Equity project. And there's a very unique kind of literacy reading program that's being advocated, not specifically by Eastern, but by other groups and Eastern in terms of teacher preparation, teacher education around literacy, early childhood literacy. That would be a project that would be, if awarded, it would run through Eastern, which would be a cool thing. We're really seeing as we're being recognized as a leader in teacher preparation and teacher education. And just to give you a quick rundown on some of the things that have been happening on the interim, there's been a number of task forces working. If you recall, we've had several of them out on campus. We had the Joint Task Force on Underrepresented Students in Higher Education. And they give a shout out to Helen Moore and Joe Hickerson for being EOU reps on those groups with me. And they focused in on affordability, student supports, and accountability. And there are proposals rolling forward in all of those groups that we'll likely see come out in legislature. The University Governance Work Group is having another meeting this week. Co-President Shav sits on that work group where they're talking about how universities are doing after a number of years of having our own boards. We're also working a lot on educator workforce work group. That's a huge thing in the state of Oregon, where there are just a lot of gaps in teacher preparation, recruitment, teacher retention, teacher licensure, support, and training. And we're working closely with our College of Education and Dean Rhett Newman on that. So I'll stop there, and I can answer any questions as they come up, or later if people have specifics they want to throw out.
So we'll go ahead and hold questions for the end, but if anybody has any questions, again, just utilize the Q&A section in the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to those at the very end of this. So thank you, Tim. Next up, we have our provost, Matt Seamers. Matt.
Thank you, Jeff. The first item that I'll be talking about will be a request for proposals for grants, a new process that will be housed in academic affairs in the provost office. It's a process where if we have faculty or divisions or programs or departments that are looking at external funding opportunities and want to work with our newly selected RFP agency that will help us develop out projects, who was selected was Cascadia. And so they've been successful with projects like Title III and other opportunities that we've seen successfully on this campus. So more information will be coming from that. If you have some early questions that you would like to know more about, you can reach out to Angie Adams in my office, or myself, or maybe a dean in the college where you're at if you're a faculty member. On November 9th, the statewide Provost Council met, and some of the agenda topics and items were some updates from our own Christopher Walsh from here at EOU. And he provided IFS updates and information, and I have him listed on here if he's available to talk and share some of those updates. Other additional items were the Math Pathways work with ODE and community colleges. There were some good discussions. The presenter was David King, and so some of the problems, there's a conflict with university admission language and high school math operations that we're going to have to learn a little bit more about. We're seeing a trend in high schools and how they're retooling the last 2 years of high school math, and the focus shifts to statistics and quantitative reasoning and less on calculus. And so we're trying to find out a little bit more on the benefits that this could bring during the transfer pathways from high school into institutions of higher education. So there were federal affairs updates that were provided and election outcomes, and Tim alluded to that. So we're understanding the clarity around that. Program proposals were put forward in early notifications. And then we got into some discussions with the transfer council matters. And that's a work in progress. It's continually drawing out questions and concerns, not only on this campus, but also other campuses across Oregon. Current enrollment updates. I will have an actual current enrollment update that I'll disseminate out to the public once I have a further analysis on it. I actually need some more qualitative data and narrative data. I should have that information out probably by the end of the week. And so I'd be happy to share that with Jeff, and we can get that out in any format we can to help with updating everybody on the current enrollment status on this campus. I've been given some information from Holly Chasen, and there's some items that I need clarity on, and I need to make sure that they're aligned with what I'm reading and analyzing, you know, at all levels. As you're aware, we have accreditation protocols and processes with Northwest, and the updates and progress is I will be taking over the duties as ALO, and so that's going to become effective immediately. And so I've begun that work as early as Monday, and so I will be moving some of the momentum and progress forward as we continue on the pathway to successful accreditation. Updates from admissions, financial aid, the registrar's office, and ROI. I've been meeting with those units individually as early as this week. And so I'm trying to get updates on what's happening in those units so I can put together kind of an outline and a report from the provost office that I can have available at our next meeting. And that's all I have right now. I don't know if Christopher Walsh is available to share some of the information. If he's not, we can move on to the next topic.
Yeah, I don't see Christopher on, so, but if he pops in later, we can jump back to him. So thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. Next up, we have an ASUU update from Drew Lusko. Drew, would you be able to update us on ASUU?
I can do that. I'm filling in for our president, Caitlin, because she's recovering from a surgery. So I have a prepared statement from her I'll read for you guys. Then at the end, I can answer any questions you have based on that. So dear Board of Trustees, I would first like to apologize for not being able to attend the meeting as I'm currently recovering from surgery. Thank you for your understanding. I am happy to report that the ASUOU Senate and Board of Directors have shown such a commitment and dedication to their positions with a strong start. Since the last board meeting of last school year, our team has created 3 goals to work on for the school year: ASUOU visibility, health and wellness, and community building. We have been diligently completing new and continued projects surrounding these goals. With the main goal for our fall term being community building, there is a subcommittee within ASUOU dedicated to helping to bring the committee to campus. Though the group is still finalizing their ideas, the current plan is to have clubs and EOU students be in a competition and have community members be the judges. The competition would be similar to the Monty Challenge, where students had teams and had to build Monty out of marshmallows. This subcommittee is still discussing exactly what the challenge will be, but is making great work towards the goal and getting in contact with respected individuals needed to help. ASUOU is also currently planning an open house, which will be a winter dance scheduled toward the end of the term. On top of all of this, ASUOU held applications for open positions and is currently in the process of hiring 1 senator, 3 justices, 1 director of diversity and equity, and 1 director of political affairs. She had to write this being absent from the meeting because she's still recovering from the surgery when she was writing this. So I can speak that we have hired the senator we need, 3 justices we need, and also filled 1 of the director positions. And then on top of that, the directors that were hired have been working on several activities. So Alexa, the director for campus affairs, is focused on the development of the open house dance and concluded the first round of her Senate allocations. I know she's doing the second one today, which I'm going to be a part of. And then me, the director for financial affairs, I've been preparing funding for the open house and planning the first meeting of the student fee committee. She concludes with, this year, our team is dedicated to improving our campus environment, both on and off campus. We hope to rebuild the campus community that disappeared during the pandemic. Please feel free to reach out to her with any advice or ideas. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Drew, for that update. Much appreciated. Next up is Ashley Walker, our Faculty Senate President. Ashley.
Thank you, Jeff. Took me a minute to get unmuted there. Hello, everyone. So our work in Faculty Senate so far has been centered around program changes and additions. And so next on our next topic that we'll be focusing on in our December meeting will be the Master's in Social Work that's to be housed in the College of Education. So we started that discussion in our last meeting and had a lot of robust discussion around that program. And so we'll be voting, making those final closing any information available and doing a vote on it in the December meeting. So that's about all I have for right now.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm going to go next with our University Council updates. I've also invited Budget and Planning to give everyone updates as well too, as there's some big topics going on there. First up is we are reviewing a policy that was just recently approved on an interim basis. It's the naming of university property for individuals and organizations. So we expect to have a decision on that from University Council by December. The next piece, it's informational item, but it's for the entire campus community. Google Workspace contacted EOU and indicated that they are moving all universities to what's called a pooled data storage. That means they're going to remove the unlimited option for our contract and move us to 100 terabytes for pooled storage. Now, what that means, in the past, we've trained everybody on just simply archiving versus deleting. We may need to rethink that strategy. As of now, all staff and faculty, including adjuncts, have 100 gigabytes worth of storage. All active students will receive 50 gigabits of storage, and then alumni, retirees, and partners will also receive 5 gigabits of storage. So we're going to start kind of small and just see how that works for a while. The big reason why these numbers might be low is so we can be sure that we're following our 15-year email retention policy. So we need some space to be able to do that. As an option for everybody, we have Microsoft OneDrive. It's available with unlimited data storage. So if anybody has any information that they want to be sure that's kept and not lost, we recommend that you utilize that. One more note, Google Share Drives, they need to be requested now. They can't just be added. The problem is Google Share Drives don't count against anybody's quota, but it does count against our overall 100 terabit storage. So we just want to make sure it's not getting overused by anybody. So, and if you have any questions on how much storage you actually have, if you go to Google Drive on the left-hand side, if you click the little cloud that says storage, it'll give you your total data usage. So, and if you have any questions, please contact helpdesk@eou.edu and we can help you there. Next up, I'd like to introduce Leanne Case and Helen Moore from Budget and Planning.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, I just lost, hold on a second. There we go. As Jeff said, my name is Helen Moore, and I have the privilege of serving as the chair of the Budget and Planning Tuition Advisory Committee this year. I want to start with a brief overview of the committee. During our first meeting, we elected Lyle Henderson as the vice chair, and we reviewed the committee charge with the new members. This academic year, the committee meets on the first Thursday of each month at 3:15 via Zoom. The committee is made up of 12 voting members, 5 faculty members, 3 administrative professional members, 2 classified staff, and 4 students. Leanne Case, our Associate Vice President of Finance and Administration, serves as the ex officio, and we receive staff support from a representative of the Institutional Research Office, Enrollment Management, Jeff Carmen from IT, John Garlitz from Facilities and Planning, and Tanya Evans is our administrative support person, and we are extremely grateful for Tanya. Committee members are charged with seeking and presenting the views of their constituencies on matters brought before the committee, and then reporting back to their constituencies with the results of discussion on those matters and any decisions made regarding them. But committee members are free to vote based on their own best judgment. Committee members will inform their constituents of the nature and outcomes of committee deliberations. The committee is also charged with reviewing the EOU budget and advising the president and university council on various budget and tuition related issues. Topics at the October and November meetings included an overview of the fiscal year 22 quarter 4 management report and a preview of the fiscal year 23 budget. Unanimous approval was received to revise our bylaws. Revisions include some language changes to reflect the changes in the campus strategic plan and mission fulfillment language, and also to allow more flexibility for our meeting schedules. We also heard from Nate Lau, Dean of College of Arts and Sciences, Humanities and Social Sciences, who presented an overview of some of the current grants in place this year, including Moonshot for Equity, Title III, Strong Start, Rural Post-Secondary and Economic Development, RPED, No Holding Back, and Credit for Prior Learning. John Garlitz, the Director of Facilities and Planning Department, shared information on current capital projects, including the Field House, Inlow Hall Phase 2, and the Grand Staircase. We also had an update on the annual effectiveness cycle, an enrollment update, and the fiscal year 23 quarter 1 management report. In the winter and spring of each year, we do a deeper dive into the details of the campus budget, and we review departmental budget requests to assist us as we offer advice and make recommendations to the president. During this time, we will also dive into tuition proposals for fiscal year 23-24. During the review of the department budgets, our mission, strategic plan, and campus master plan are considered as we evaluate each request. Also during the process, we invite the submitters of the budget requests to make a presentation of their request to the committee. This allows us to ask questions about the requests and gather more information to use in making our recommendations. So please note that this was just a quick overview of the committee and what we do. There is more information on the committee, including a list of committee members, available on our website, www.eou.edu/budplan. So you're also encouraged to reach out to your representative on the committee if you have any questions or just need more info or have suggestions. So I will turn it over to Leanne now for some more detailed information.
Great. Thank you, Helen. Helen has been an awesome chair already throughout the year. She has lots of experience with budget and planning, so it's been a pleasure to work with her this year. The committee has already been very busy, as you can see. We spend a lot of time educating the committee, bringing them up to speed so that they can make thoughtful and engaged decisions in the spring about the university budget, as well as the tuition process. This slide just shows the annual campus operating timeline. And these are all, not all, these are many of the milestones that budget and planning works through each year at each one of their committee meetings. So they are currently learning about tuition and reviewing other campus tuition, setting priorities for tuition, looking at the current year budget, and then how that tuition will impact the future year budget. So much of their work in the next 2 months will be focused on tuition as they work through that process to make a recommendation to the president. The tuition setting timeline is very similar to the budget timeline, but it just shows additional touch points where we reach out to students and meet with students and have community forums, bring everything back to the committee, bring it to the cabinet. All of these things intersect throughout the year. So many touch points when it comes to tuition and the budget setting process. Same thing with room and board. Ultimately, the board approves room and board. And so the Budget and Planning Committee also reviews room and board rates as well as mandatory fees in the budget and planning process. So again, many touch points throughout the year. Budget and planning members are happy to visit with you anytime if you have questions about where we're at in the process of any of those decision making. Just looking ahead for a little more detail on where we're at with the budget. We look at 4 major fund types for budget and planning, and when we're looking at quarterly management reports and setting the budget. So we look at education in general, auxiliaries funds, designated operations, and service departments. This slide just shows the makeup of where all of the revenue streams come from in each one of those different fund types. The E&G budget was approved by the Board of Trustees at the meeting last week. This slide shows the difference between the preliminary budget that was presented to the board in May and the final budget that was presented last week. There weren't a lot of changes when you look at the net operating at the bottom line, but there were internally many changes that were made. The preliminary budget was based on a fund balance at the end of FY22 of $12.3 million. The state funding we had projected to increase by 1.1 million over FY23. Enrollment was set to increase by 6.4%. Tuition rates were applied to the revenue line as tuition rates were approved in the spring. Plan to invest $3.1 million in fee remissions, which is 12.5% of our gross tuition revenue. Compensation at the time that we set the preliminary budget was only based on classified salary increases. That contract had been ratified and we knew what the increases would be on July 1st. We were still in negotiations with faculty during that time, and the administrative professionals had not been determined. So we presented a preliminary budget without those 2 compensation rates included. Targeted investments were included for academic expansion. We'd included mandatory and compliance increases to support programmatic needs. Many of these were in the IT area, facilities areas, or directly related to the campus, to the colleges. At that time, we had planned to find savings, salary savings or institutional savings of $1.5 million during this year. The budget realities going into the final budget preparation, we were able to, through the use of grant savings and vacancy savings, find $3.1 million in vacancy savings, or we plan to find 3.1 throughout the year in vacancy savings to help support the budget and bring in at this number of this 2.2 use of fund balance at the end of the year. We also received $1 million from HEC to support visual and performing arts scholarships. So that was an additional amount of money from the state that we were not expecting. We are reducing our fee remission impact to $2.8 million versus $3.1 million. We will use a portion of lottery funds to shore up the fee remissions this year. There's no impact to the students. The students will continue to receive exactly what they had planned to receive throughout the year. The big one for us and the change between the preliminary and the final in the revenue side was the enrollment. We had planned for a 6.4% increase at the preliminary, and the reality was we were down 2.9% as in my projections for the budget. So we reduced the tuition revenue there going into the final. We also added salary increases for faculty and salary increases for the administrative professionals as well. In addition, other changes were made or refinements were made to current expenditures, programmatic needs, minor increases in library collections, insurance assessment, those types of things that were made. Our compensation budget for FY23, unclassified wages, which is faculty and administrative professionals, adjuncts, those that aren't classified, or students. Our budget is $19.2 million for those salaries. Classified wages make up $5.9 million. Healthcare costs, the premium costs that it costs the institution, $6.5 million, and retirement contributions for our employees is $6.3 million. Our overall compensation percentage of our total E&G budget is 71.7%. A lot of people are human resources are very important to the institution to make it run. They're also a big piece of our budget. Again, we looked at the salary savings and institutional savings. In the preliminary budget, I had estimated about 1.5 million. We're now estimating 3.1, almost double or more than double of what we had planned for. Much of this comes from vacancy savings. We have a lot of positions around the campus that are currently vacant, waiting to be filled throughout the year. So those are adding up. They add up very quickly. As of the end of Q1, I had already accumulated $1.2 million in vacancy savings. In addition to that, we've been able to utilize many of our grants to offset current labor expenditures. So we're looking at about $800,000 in grant funds to be able to offset that compensation. So those are good things. They help with the budget, but they do impact the workflow. Someone's still doing the work behind all of those vacancies that are open. So we're very cognizant of the workforce that we have available to us now and doing everything that we can to make sure that we shore up those positions and get them filled as quickly as possible. At the end of the year, our budget is, excuse me, we're estimating we will spend $2.2 million of our fund balance. Again, that's another deficit from the prior year. Ending the year with $10.7 million in our fund balance, 21.4% of our revenue, 2.46 months of operating. The 21.4 is within the board goals, so we're okay there. But it does create some challenges in the future years for us. So that'll be one of the things for budget and planning to be focused on throughout the year, is how do we minimize the impact of the years going forward. Just a quick look at the non-ENGs, the auxiliaries, and how they look. Auxiliaries are estimated to bring in $7.6 million in revenue. They'll have about $6 million in expenses throughout the year, netting 1.5 at the end of the year. This does not include depreciation or principal bond payments. Designated operations, $576,000, with a net at the end of the year of about $140,000. Oops, sorry about that. And service departments, $132,000. They'll end the year with about $7,600 that they'll put towards their fund balance or their cash balance at the end of the year. So all funds look good at this point through Q1, and we have no issues with Q1 or where the funds are at this time. And that is it. Budget and planning has done great work already this year. I look forward to working with them, and they have a heavy lift as far as a committee goes.
Great. Thank you, Helen and Leanne. Again, if anybody has any questions, please utilize the Q&A section of the webinar. Next up is our capital projects subject, and the Director of Facilities and Planning is here with us, John Garlitz. John, I'll pass it over to you.
Hello, thank you. Capital projects. I'm just going to do a verbal update this today. We do not have much in new. There's some little bit of nuances. So the first thing I want to cover is the field house. It is ongoing. We do now have heat in the building, which was a feat of epic proportions, it seemed like. We are hoping to have a temporary occupancy, a temporary occupancy permit sometime at towards the end of this month. We still have an elevator, but the city has indicated we can get a temporary occupancy permit before the elevator arrives, and we could start transitioning and working with the users and the stakeholder team to transition users into the field house for opening soon thereafter. Inlet Hall Phase 2, we are done with schematic design, and Sarah Hollenbeck, our new capital projects manager, is working with the stakeholder team to seek feedback on some layouts. We are anticipating having a better understanding of the schedule in January. So we'll know when people need to move out. It'll still several months from now. Everybody will have a several month head start on that. And that is entering the design development stage. We will also be looking this winter at procuring a CMGC, construction manager, general contractor. That'll help during design development, make sure from a constructability standpoint, everything is clear, concise, the plans and the specifications are to a level where we hope to receive good bids. So expect to hear a lot more in the coming coming months for the Inlet Hall Phase 2 project. The grand staircase, we are nearing completion will be in a winter of 2024. However, we are close to having the plans and permitting completed. We're in the process with SHPO on some of the final permitting items, as well as then I think we're going to be transitioning to the city's permits. Part of the SHPO permitting is consultation with the Confederated Tribes, and that will all be permitted once we have secured all the proper permits. We will be seeking construction bids to over probably January, February, and hopefully getting good prices. So we will start construction in the spring when the weather allows, and that'll go through the summer and into the fall. So we hope to have everything completed winter of 2024. Everything still looks good. The Ackerman Anthropology Lab and Class Lab. We have got confirmation a final heating component has been shipped. We will be receiving that hopefully in the next few days. We anticipate to have the contractor come back on site either the last week of November or the first week of December and have heat in that location. And then Sarah will be working with the faculty on once the heat's up and running, Sarah will be working with the faculty on transitioning into that space, hopefully for winter term. The last project on the capital update list is the G Avenue and 7th Street pedestrian to EDA access. We've done a lot of work on G Avenue. There's still work to be done. We still have some ADA crossings. We have some ADA upgrades we need at 7th Street. And we, of course, ran out of the weather, as sometimes construction projects do. So we have shifted some of the work to spring. So it'll when the weather allows, we'll get back on it, and hopefully by late spring we'll have all those ADA improvements installed and new illumination along G Avenue. That was my verbal update for now. Any questions, any comments?
If you have any questions or comments, please pop those into the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. Thank you, John, for that update. Last but not least, we saved the best for last. I'd like to have Lacey Carpella, the Vice President of Student Affairs, to give us an update on grants overview. So Lacey?
Hello, yes, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead. I think I could be able to share screen. So I have a quick PowerPoint. And Jeff, what I'm hearing is I'm the last thing. So I have about 10 minutes, would you say? About that?
However long you need.
Okay. Wonderful, great. Excellent. So I'm very excited to be sharing with you today a little bit of our grant overview. And I think if there's time allotted, I will talk a little bit more about Moonshot as well. And so it's really important to know. We have seven grants. It's real life, right? I had to pick up my kid from school and bring him back so I could get here to be able to present to you all today. So we have 7 grants. And when we think about 7 grants, we have a lot more than 7 grants on our campus, but there are 7 key grants that are surrounding student success, retention, and equity. And so I'm going to speak to those 7 grants and speak to the synergy between the grants. They are a combination of state and federal funds. And then for this year, the grants have $5.4 million. Now, understand that the budget for this includes position, it includes money for software, for programming, for training. So it really allows us to create some capacity within the work that we do. So here are the highlights of the 7 grants. We have Moonshot for Equity, which if I have time, I'll share a little bit more. And it's really focused on initiatives that eliminate equity gaps. Then we have Title III, which is federal funding. And it's really focused to help expand our capacity to serve low-income students. It's really important in our Title III federal grants. The work is really centered around advising, equity, sense of belonging, academic courses when it comes to academic preparedness. So it spans the student life cycle and it spans multiple departments and programs. Really want to thank Dean Lau for his work serving as that director, as well as for Beanie Moses, our new AVP, will fill in as director of that. We have Strong Start, which is federal and state. It's programming really focused on our students that were impacted by the pandemic. So that was this year's first year students. It was our sophomore year students that are sophomore now, really working on initiatives to help support them in their transition to higher education. And that includes advising. It includes having them be able to participate in the Week of Welcome. So we had those returners come and had activities for them in Week of Welcome since they were unable to get the robust Week of Welcome that has happened in the past or that happened this year to help with that transition. And then the Rural Post-Secondary Economic Development, which is the RPED. And it's really focused on aligning pathways to students to come to EOU with a focus on rural Eastern Oregon. And it's really kind of going from elementary school to post-secondary school, not elementary school, but secondary school to post-secondary school, and helping them success and access higher education. Then we have ASTIO. We've had ASTIO for a while, and it's focused on our STEM majors. So it has a cohort model. So those students have programs together. They live in the residence hall together. There's scholarships connected to that. They have specialized advising and courses. So it's that cohort model. No Holding Back, which is our only grant that's not state or federal. It's part of WICHE, which is an organization that's focused on higher education. It's evaluating our holds that we have for our students. So it's looking at our hold processes because we have students have holds for financial reasons. We have ones that are part for success. And so that's a huge part of that. Then we have Prior Learning, and this is a state grant. And it's really focused on those opportunities for individuals to receive credit for knowledge and skills gained through work-life experience. Hopefully this is big on your screen. If not, you can always send me an email and I can send you a link to this. But this is allows us to see the synergy that is between these grants. So when we first heard about Moonshot, which was over 2 years ago, we were really excited about Moonshot. We didn't know if we could get Moonshot. We were hopeful we could get Moonshot. So our Title III grant, we really had Moonshot in mind when we started writing our Title III grant. Same with Strong Start, really looking at what's the key components of Moonshot, wrote it with the hopes we'd be able to get Moonshot. So there's a lot of synergy within these grants, within Title IX, Strong Start, RPED, ASTIO, No Holding Back, and Prior Learning. And this is, I think, a good way of demonstrating that this really is our synergy there. When you think of 7 grants, you think there's, that's a lot of work, but in fact, it's actually creating capacity for us to do the work. It allows us to have, additional staffing, additional funding for programs, additional funding for training to really help us be successful in there. And so I think Jeff, I might be able to do a little bit of moonshot. Is that okay? Let's go to moonshot.
Yes.
So any of the other grants that say any of our individuals watching us today that you're interested in learning more about any of the other grants, you can send me an email, or you can send Provost Seamers an email as well, and we can get you connected to those project directors or those that are overseeing those efforts, and we can do a deeper dive with you on those. So I'm going to do moonshot very quickly. So the goal of moonshot, it's very simplistic in how we say it, but it's very complex in how you accomplish it. So it's really focused on erasing equity gaps, increasing access to higher education. It's important to know one of the key components of our moonshot program is an ecosystem. So you're actually in an ecosystem with Blue Mountain College and Treasure Valley. We already have great partnerships with them, but this is just increasing our partnership. It's widening and deepening our partnerships with them. We already use Navigate on our campus, and Blue Mountain and Treasure Valley are going to be using that Navigate software as well. They're starting that journey with Navigate. One that's going to allow us to have transferability when it comes to our students having the same platform, and really help when it comes to onboarding students and transferring students for those institutions. EAB is a partner with us in this work. It's important to know that we control Moonshot. We determine what initiatives we work on, how we move ourselves forward, but they're there to help us. They're there to support us, help to provide training. We already had training with our cabinet and our deans around equity-minded leadership. They help with technology implementation. So making sure they were using Navigate to the best of our ability. It's helping task force coordination and support. So they're working with TVCC and Blue Mountain College and getting them onboarded, getting them set to really start Moonshot. So helping us with that work. And then that reporting accountability. So helping us make sure we have the data. If we're unable to have the data we need to demonstrate success, helping us get that data, connecting us to subject matter experts, and really with that coaching and guidance to help us be successful. Beyond just our own ecosystem in Eastern Oregon, we are joining a national ecosystem of Moonshot for Equity institutions. There's 4 regional ecosystems, and we're considered to be that, which is comprised of 2- and 4-year institutions working together. Then you have Vanguard institutions, which are larger clusters of institutions working together. And there's a total of 18 Moonshot institutions. So we're able to connect with our colleagues across the United States, look at best practice, effective practices that they've utilized. They're learning from us as well. They're having conversations now about the importance of rural students and supporting rural students based on the work that we do. So it's really that sharing of information and knowledge and support. So Moonshot is really focused around utilizing effective and best practices to eliminate the equity gaps. These are some of the 15 best practices that have been found to eliminate equity gaps and to make progress forward. We're not going to do all 15. Institutions don't do all 15. You look at these effective practices and you typically choose 3 to 4 a year. But really it's that focus on leadership and our campus climate, our academic policies and practice, access and enrollment, and then that student support and belongingness. So really focusing on those 4 key aspects and then diving deep into there. You can see with our grant that specifically for looking at holds, that for academic policies and practice, we've already started that work. So that's one of those low-hanging fruit, if you will, that we'll incorporate it in our Moonshot work. So it's important to know our structure at EOU when it comes to Moonshot. Every institution is a little different, but ours, we have our program sponsors. So that's our co-presidents. Jordan and myself are executive leadership and support. And we have our program owner, which is our project director. I will be, hopefully we'll receive that announcement to the institution about who was selected for that position within the next few days. We have our key division departmental lead. So that's Matt Seamers as the provost. And then Beanie Moses is our AVP. Faculty and staff, the role that they play is engage in practice teams, as well as provide content expertise. And the best practice teams really are to be determined, right? So looking at the initiatives that we choose to move forward on, gathering who needs to be our experts at the table, and then bringing those teams together. So we have accomplished our first 100 days of Moonshot, which is our welcome call. We did a general campus announcement. We had our leadership training. We have started our data and IR work, kind of gathering what data do we have, what data do we need. And then most recently, we launched a diagnostic. So a few of you may have received a survey from us asking us what's working, what's not, utilizing that information to figure out how can we improve our processes so we can move forward. And so another a snapshot of activities. So after the first 100 days, we have the 3 to 4 best practices. So we determine those, we form our teams, then we host an institute to really start the education and start working on our plan. We start looking at data and processes and do that deep dive. We meet with our cross ecosystem team. So if we have something in particular, we want to work with TVCC and Blue Mountain College, we're bringing them in. We'll make our recommendations, we'll implement those, we'll assess, did we have an impact? And then hopefully we move into sustainability mode and then go to our next practice team and our next initiative. And so I know that if we do have questions, so it's important to know that we have a strategic approach to student success and utilizing grants and the work with grants to do that. We have the power. I want you to think about the power of the synergy between these grants. And then really it's helping to create capacity for us to do that work. So positions, programming, software. I'm really excited about the work, have made great headways on many of those grants. So I know that we just have just a few moments before we need to end. If you have any specific questions, need any or want more specific details, I'm happy to speak to anyone. I have done a deep dive with all of the colleges, and I've started to do deep dives with departments and programs. So if you yourself as a department or program wish to have me come out and speak to your department or your division, I'm happy to do that. I have a road show that I take on the road and happy to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Lacey, for that. We're down to our Q&A section. We received 2 questions. One of them was regarding Moonshot for Equity. I'm just curious if the anonymous attendee who posted that would add a clarifying question whether or not Lacey addressed that with her update, or if you have a specific question. The next one is specifically for the co-presidents. Will the current co-presidents be making a recommendation to add the Associate Vice President of DEIB to the Presidential Search Committee? And Richard, would you mind taking that question?
Sure, I'd be glad to make a few comments around that. We have had conversations about this. Obviously, with the work of the board and the leadership, diversity is an important part of the search. And we are screening firms. One of the criteria is their previous experience and expertise regarding DEIB work. It is worth mentioning that our new AVP of DEIB, sorry for the acronyms, is just starting and is critical to the university that they have an opportunity on campus with work related to House Bill 2864, Title III, and Strong Start. We'll continue to look at the DEIB components of the search process, and we expect it to continue to be a priority with a new president, as it is a priority of the board and the university right now. Our search committee is pretty much formed. And so from that perspective, I don't see us adding any more members, but I do see DEIB an important part of the search process all the way through.
Thank you, Richard, for that update. This next question, I'm not sure if we can answer this because we don't have HR with us today. What is being done to help fill vacant positions? How are we preventing employee turnover?
Jeff, I'm happy to add a few comments on that. It's a really broad question, and it's a really broad challenge that actually the entire nation is facing. Employee turnover is real. And the job market is extremely challenging. We are looking, I guess what we can talk about specifically for EOU We are looking at what we can do to streamline and any improvements we can make to our search process. I have asked the HR director to dig into that with his team. Are there things that we are doing within the process that might be that maybe could be improved upon? And so that's one of our first efforts. I will say that a easy or quick solution we have not found. Our peer institutions are facing the exact same problem that we are facing, and so we will continue to work hard on our end. But I won't pretend that there is a simple solution to this challenge. It will take all of us continuing to work on it.
Great, thank you for that. With that, I believe that concludes our fall term university updates. I want to thank everybody for attending, and we'll send out an info line when the winter term was going to be scheduled. So thank you, everybody.